Mythical morning.
Oh, good morning.
Oh, good morning.
Oh, good morning.
Oh, good morning. Today, welcome to Oh, Good Morning, a pop culture podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about the 2021 movie Dear Evan Hansen, based on the 2017 Broadway show Dear Evan Hansen. Thoughts? What are our thoughts? Who would like to start?
I would love to start, Kyle.
Wonderful.
Going into this, and Ryan will tell anyone this. I am one of the most avid Dear Evan Hansen. What's the word? Anti-stan. I do not like the musical. I do not like what it's about. I do not like the ways in which Evan Hansen takes advantage of a grieving family and also his mother and also his childhood. Just a lot of bad stuff. And I I don't like the musical very much because of a lot of different issues that I have with it that I can understand make it a good musical, but I just personally don't like it. The movie was not good. It was not well acted. I don't think it was well shot at all. I think that there were some good performances in it, but I think that either they were out of place in a movie format or they were outshined by the amount of bad in the movie. I think it could have been a really good movie. There was one really, really nice addition at the end that I really, really loved, and I want that to be a part of the show moving forward. But yeah, I didn't like it very much. I think there could have been a good movie had there been more time and a better direction, but I didn't like it going in, and I don't like it now.
So, the one and only thing I'm going to say about the musical is that um, does it have problems? Yes. But those problems get people to talk about topics and just about mental health as a whole, which is why I love the show, because I think it starts the conversation, whether or not in a good or bad way, but it starts a conversation, which is, I think, all that musical theater should do. But with that being said, the movie, it was interesting. I was not a fan of it. I thought that, if Dear Evan Hansen was going to be in movie format, I was hoping for it to be like a pro shot of some sort, but instead we got the movie, which is fine, but it's not good. I don't like the people who they casted for it. Like, the only person who I actually really liked, whether or not this is an unpopular opinion, was actually Ben Platt. But I'll dive into that a little more. But I just think all the other characters were just very stagnant in like their emotions, and they didn't really show a lot. But yeah, I don't know. I also just thought like a lot of the shots they chose for this movie was interesting, to say the least. Like the fact during it was Requiem, their final shot was just of the house. It's like, what is going on? Why do I need to see the house? Like, is there some deeper meaning to this, or is this just bad cinematography?
Cinematography.
Wow.
Cinematography.
Cinematography.
Did you ever have a dream in which you really
like you wish you were but I don't know, the cinematography was just, it was very sketchy, but overall the film, it was just meh. It wasn't like the worst thing I've ever seen, but it was definitely not the greatest thing I've ever seen by a long shot.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Ryan. I think there's a lot of problems, and I agree, there is some good moments, and this movie is not the worst thing in the world, but I think all those big problems that are almost sometimes laughable and sometimes just so problematic that it just covers up every good part about this movie. And I feel like it's the complete opposite of the musical, where the musical is it's very dramatic, and it's supposed to make you cry, and that's what the musical does, because it is a very dramatic story and it talks about mental health. Though you said, yeah, I disagree that it's talking about it in a good way, but we will get to that conversation later. But this movie tried to do the exact same thing, and movies and theater are very different mediums. Theater is bigger, it's to a bigger audience, and the performances are more broad because you have to make your performance big so the audience can see it. And I feel like that was the biggest problem with this movie. this movie was made for Ben Platt, and his father was the producer. It was to what would you call it? To maintain, or not maintain, to capture his performance on Broadway, the one that he won the Tony Award for. And that's all it was. They cut out every other part of this movie that was not about Evan Hansen in this movie. And that's what really bothered me overall. And on top of that, Ben Platt, who is probably too old to play the character on screen, and his on-screen performance messes up a lot of things because he just took his Broadway performance and he put it on screen. He didn't really make any adjustments at all, making it so broad and almost ridiculous. Like, there's moments where he walks around and he makes these huge big gesture, big movements, like he does little twitches, but those twitches would work great on Broadway because it's a huge stage and there's lots of people watching. But on film, when you're very close up to him, those twitches are almost laughable. It's almost like a SNL sketch on live TV where those are supposed to be played for comedy. And I feel like this whole movie just struggled because a lot of those facts and a lot of just not really understanding how to adapt and just kind of saying we're adapting it to capture Ben Platt's performance instead of adapting it to tell the story on film, if that makes sense. And my favorite song was cut. Anybody Have a Map is my favorite song and is a great opening number, I think. Because this is why I think this, because I think it grounds Evan's character with his mother.
It does.
And that's my biggest problem with the movie. It was just about Evan Hansen and nobody else.
So this is the one thing I'm going to say about the two songs I did cut in this movie.
There were three. There were four.
I guess
there were four. Disappear. Anybody Got a Map? To Break in a Glove. And good for you. Good for you.
I guess
good for you.
To Break in a Glove was like a little scene that had no sentimentality at all. But and so Anybody Have a Map and Good For You, I loved how they kind of toyed with us because they had the band playing Good For You and Anybody Have a Map.
I was furious. I was furious. I actually think that this is a great segue because Kyle, I completely agree with you. So, as much of an avid musical hater for Dear Evan Hansen, I do not like the musical at all. But the parts of it that I do like are the commentary on, and this very interesting argument of whether or not a mentally ill person's actions are still theirs, because obviously they are. You do something screwed up, you did that screwed up thing, but the argument about mental illness in Dear Evan Hansen, I think, is very interesting, especially in the stage show, because constantly in the stage show we are shown both sides. We're shown kind of this Evan, his mind is so screwed up in a way that you can almost agree that there was no other way for him to act the way that he did. However, in the musical, there's that other argument talking about all the screwed up things he does, which are showcased in Disappear, in Good For You, in Connor constantly being in the musical. He's not constantly in it, but he's in there enough to
it's his conscience.
Give us a conscience. And I think I completely agree with you. Anybody Have a Map? I feel like the musical is about Evan Hansen, but it's also about the people around him that his actions have ramifications for. I think one of my biggest issues with the movie was it wasn't about anybody else. It was only about Evan. And the songs they took out specifically, I had an issue with, because when you're watching the movie, the only point in which he has any moment of self-realization is in Words Fail, which is way too far, because we don't have Anybody Have a Map, which introduces us to everybody in the story. We start with Waving Through a Window, which is very I thought it was a weird way to start. They cut To Break in a Glove, which I think is, I don't really care about that, but they also cut Disappear and Good For You, which are both actions in which Evan is offered criticism before we get to Words Fail, because at the point that we're at Words Fail, he's almost having a mental breakdown to the Murphys, and at that point, I'm sitting in the audience this doesn't feel like the hard-hitting Words Fail that it should be. It just feels like a pity party at that point. I feel like when he's talking to the Murphys in that moment, he's very much being completely honest. But because we didn't have any other moments of self-realization, we just kind of sit there and we're oh, so it just sounds like you're asking them for pity. You're I did this, but I had to because I was so broken and hurt. And I know that that's not what Words Fail is about. But because we didn't have any other moments of self-realization, we get all the way here in a place where Evan the entire movie hasn't questioned anything that he's done, which I think makes him look awful. And I think, I actually do think that Ben Platt gave an amazing performance, but I think it's almost like torn down because there's no argument offered in the movie. Like, the entire time it's just like Evan doing things and no one questions it until we get to the point where him and his mom have an argument, which was also, I like Julianne Moore in this movie, but I did not like that argument. It was very like, I am your mother. Like, it wasn't very hard hitting, but my issue was the way that they tried to portray Ben Platt and Evan Hansen in this movie, because without everything else in the musical, it just doesn't, like, it doesn't hold up. Like, it's just like, I found myself getting angry during If I Could Tell Her, because it just felt like he was taking advantage of her, because there were no moments in which he was like questioning what he was doing. It just, in the movie, it felt like every like petty criticism I had about the musical was just true. Like, oh, he's just using this to get into her pants, because he wasn't questioning what he was doing.
Yeah, I think overall I had my biggest problems were like those are more specific to the story. My bigger problems overall with the tone of the musical. Like, I think after Dear Evan Hansen was one of the first musicals, not one of the first musicals. Let's say one of when I first got into like modern musical theater, it was one of the first like more modern musicals that I listened to. And I really liked it then, and I feel like after listening to more musicals like that have similar commentary about mental illness and about suicide, like Heathers, about what are some other ones? I can't.
Fun Home.
Yeah, just which are completely two opposites. Fun Home, very dramatic, very very dramatic, and takes it very. Sorry, that was my dinging bell of my computer. I apologize for listening. Fun Home, which takes everything really seriously and is really dramatic, and rightfully so. It's a very serious story. But then you have Heathers, which is a commentary. It's a comedy, but it's also a commentary on this stuff. And even though it's a comedy, it still has pretty solid commentary. It's almost like it's a dark comedy.
Yeah.
And watching this film, I really wish that Dear Evan Hansen leaned into either of those two. Because I think the story of this musical is so, it's almost farcical in nature, because there's no way this kind of thing would happen in real life, where he's like, you got my paper, your son died, and now you have my paper, and now I'm gonna pretend to be his best friend. That's something that would happen in a farce. And I wish that this musical either went into the dark comedy aspect or the super dramatic and just changed that part about whatever, the farce part, you know? Like, it didn't feel very... It just tried to kind of appeal to everyone, and there was a lot of comedy bits, and which shows can make that work. And you can have dramatic parts in a comedy, and you can have comedic parts in a drama, but I feel like it was just somewhere in between where it felt untruthful, and it felt like it was just trying to make you cry all the time, but it was also trying to make you laugh. It just felt very... It was very, I don't know how to describe it. Like, very just good. It was for every audience, you know? It didn't try to make any stance. It just tried to make a whole bunch of stances and tried to make it for every audience member so that somebody would get something out of it, which is good in some places, but overall, I think it hurt the overall message of the story.
Yeah, just to kind of Kangaroo Pouch off that, I think that...
What?
I think the most overlooked part of, I didn't want to say piggyback because everyone else says piggyback, so I want to say Kangaroo Pouch.
Thank you. Did Isabel make that up?
Yeah, I don't know who did, but I love it. But just to Kangaroo Pouch off that, I think the most overlooked part of just like Dear Evan Hansen as a whole is the fact that Evan was kind of pushed to make these decisions of like, oh, I guess, that suicide note was me. And yeah, it wasn't good of him to like go further with it and make up all these emails. But like, what's his name? Connor's mother was pushing him so hardcore to this narrative to where he had to believe it. Otherwise, he was letting not only the Connors down, Connor's family
Connors.
down, but yeah, I also think, that wasn't exactly correct of him to keep on going further with it. But yeah, it's so weird, especially seeing somebody with, that much anxiety and being so alone to be pushed to that wanting to not feel alone anymore and will do anything to not feel alone, which I think is a very, very powerful message, whether or not it's conveyed in the best way. But another point that I wanted to make off of Miklos was that in this film, it seemed like, compared to the musical, like in the musical, Evan does not look like a good person at all through it. Like he looks like a pretty, he looks very douchey. Like he is very douchey in the musical, but then like the movie like completely transformed that, and it painted him to be like this good guy, and it's like that's like the best part of Dear Evan Hansen, because in the musical you really question his morals and like who he is as a person, and it like starts that conversation of like, well, is Evan Hansen good, or whether his actions just terrible, which makes him a bad person, or does that make him a good person? Which I think you could just have that debate forever, but like the movie painted him so much to be this good guy. And I mean, I agree, like taking away a lot of those parts of the musical like didn't reinform that, because it made him look like this like really good person who made a mistake, and that was it. Which is why like Words Fail, like I loved his performance of it, but it had no weight to it. Like in the musical, I cried from Words Fail to the end, just because it's so heavy. But like in Words Fail, I couldn't feel anything because there was no emotional weight to it. So it's just that. And also another thing I want to bring up real quick, we don't even have to like talk about it, but also like the vocal mixing it sucked. Like
they did those people so dirty.
The sound mixing in this movie is just terrible.
It's
like
terrible.
Overall, it was just not good. Like at first I was like, we're making some interesting choices, and then I was like, we are making some terrible choices.
No, literally.
Not only as actors and actresses, but as the editing team, it's just like, what is going on? Like, did you guys hire a whole bunch of amateurs? And I mean, I will say there's parts of the movie that are like, they're good, but it's just is so overshadowed by all the bad stuff. And like the one part for me for that vocal mixing got me was during You Will Be Found. It's
oh my
right
God.
It's right after Zoe says, when you're broken on the ground, and then it's like the big chorus part. Like that's supposed to be loud and big and just like not jubilant, but it's just supposed to be like have a lot of weight to it. And I remember like me sitting in my seat, like I just started bawling at that point. And yeah, it was just had no emotional weight, because it felt like the volume went from here, and then you could see the editing team just go to that part, and it was quiet. Like it got so quiet, and I'm like, what is this is so
they did
bad.
This little shitty zoom out thing with like all the people. I was like, this is not YouTube. Kind of. I want to talk about the song specifically, because there was this. I was really annoyed with this because Only Us. I also didn't like the way that they changed up the plot a little bit, because Only Us is supposed to be like they've been dating for a little bit already, and she's singing this to like reassure his anxieties. But like the way they change it in the movie is like she's telling him that she likes him, and is like, actually, this is right after You Will Be Found too, and she's like, yeah, actually, I don't want to talk about my dead brother anymore. Like in the musical, it makes more sense, like plot-wise, because it's like, oh, like we talk about it so much, like I just want this to be us. Like I don't want to live in the good that you did for my family. I want to live just us, which I think is a beautiful thing to like want to move forward. And I think that the way that holds for Evan's character at the moment is amazing too. But in the musical, like I remember thinking, we're not starting this now. No, we're not. Because she's like talking mid-sentence and then she starts singing, and it's just like this weird moment, because it's just like Evan talking about how much he loves her and wants to be with her, but it's like, bro, you guys haven't even started dating yet. Like this is so weird. And just overall, like I did not like Zoe.
Yeah.
I did not like Zoe, and I did not like how we had a song called The Anonymous Ones, in which they talk about people with mental illness who we don't notice. When I think moments before, Zoe tried killing herself in a car.
In the car?
Can we talk about that for a second? It's the way that she had a suicide attempt, and we just didn't talk about it after that. Like we have a song called The Anonymous Ones. We have a song called You Will Be Found, but we're not going to address or talk about like this really weird scene where she just lets go of the steering wheel and starts speeding. Like, and why was it even during Requiem? Like, I
feel like this movie, really is trying to normalize the attempted suicide. Sadly,
yeah.
Like it really in a really bad way. Like I remember when the 13 Reasons Why kind
Oh,
of craze was
girl.
going on, and I never got the chance to watch it. And I can't say anything about it because I don't have an opinion about it because I've not seen it. But I feel like this, if I were to watch it, I feel like it's on the same level as this because it normalizes it in a lot of ways. And one other thing before we probably have to wrap up here soon. I feel like this show in general that's always really bothered me that I forgot to mention is how Evan Hansen is in the story and how he acts in the story. It feels like he is giving the most kind of vague portrayal of mental illness in a lot of ways. And they're trying to not be specific so that a lot of people can relate to it. And in not being specific, I feel like it's almost harming the story more, and it's like it's setting us back in representation in mental illness rather than putting it forward.
Yeah, I also think like with that in the movie, they also tried to compensate with that with like, oh, what pills are you taking? Like, who asks that?
No.
Like, who actually in the right mind asks
nobody,
that?
literally, I'm questioning whether or not the people who made this movie have ever spoken to a mentally ill person. Like, the last fucking thing I'm doing is like, oh, but like it was so awkward. Like, you could tell that these people didn't do their research. Like, I think it's amazing when actors take on roles in regards to things that they don't know things about. Obviously, there's a line with like race and gender identity sometimes. Well, no, not sometimes, all the time. But I think in regards to taking on a sexual orientation role or a role with mental illness, I think that with the right research and with the right intention, you're able to do it. But just, you could tell that they didn't do, I will give Ben Platt a pass. I think he did his research on Broadway. He knows his shit. But Amanda Stenberg, first of all, no one says that. Second of all, like no one says that. Like the last thing that I'm doing is going, what prescriptions?
What pills are you taking?
It's the way that she had no like she just said, what pills are you taking? And it was just such an awkward moment, and like you could tell what they were trying to do, but it just wasn't executed properly because Hollywood just doesn't want to take their time and like do research on these actual people. And when it turns out like shit, we just blame the actors, which it's the actor's fault, but it's like, oh, I'm so upset. I was so excited for Amanda Stenberg. I love Amanda.
I think this movie just did like we talked about. There's some good moments. I'm gonna end on a more happy note before we go into our final thoughts. I really think, even though I find Sincerely Me to be problematic in a lot of ways, and it's them making fun of Connor who committed suicide, I think that's the tone I was talking about earlier about like the Heathers tone in a way, like the dark comedy.
Yes,
that'd be really interesting. And I think Sincerely Me, for some reason, worked for me in this movie. Because I think they actually went into like the dark comedy moment, and I was just not having a good time with the rest of the movie, and I think Sincerely Me worked for me because it's the most well-filmed song in this movie, in my opinion, and it's the most entertaining, even though it is still a little bit problematic in a lot of ways. I think the sound mixing was awful because they were in go-karts, and I don't know what the hell they were doing. It was just a lot of fun.
There was so much going on there.
It was a lot of fun, I think. Like, that's the biggest thing. I had a smile, genuinely had a smile instead of laughing at the movie at that part because it was fun. Like, it was a fun thing, even though it was ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why? Okay, whatever. I'm just gonna laugh along with this. But I think, weirdly, I just still didn't like it. But I think I liked it more than other stuff, you know?
Yeah. So I think Sincerely Me actually worked a lot. And I do agree. This is definitely the best like filmed scenes or like
perfect
just
for a
scene.
movie.
Like it was just so perfect because the fact that they were like switching back and forth from Connor to Evan and what's his name?
What is his name? Jared, yep. And I like my parents, and then like switch back. Who says that? No, literally.
Really switch back. I love my parents. It's so funny, but I really like that scene. But another thing that I really, really want to applaud in the film was Connor's new song right at the end. It was so impactful, and I wish they actually would have had that in the musical because it actually feels like an actual conclusion where like it ties everything up super nicely. And the fact that like Evan's going around and like really trying to figure out who Connor was instead of like this trying to be like fake and like
kind of sorry for himself.
Yeah, well, not feeling sorry for himself, but feeling sorry for what he did.
Yeah.
And like trying to go out and make amends, but not make amends. I don't know. That doesn't really make sense, but
I feel like I feel like almost like I feel like the musical doesn't really like end. Like I feel like Evan doesn't do anything to make what he did better. And while I don't think that this makes up for it, I think that learning about Connor's life and who he was and
finding the video too.
I was sobbing at that. That's another thing.
That was really emotionally impactful.
Dear Evan Hansen is really sad. Like I did not know that like as much going into this, but it's really sad. Like I was sobbing, but like I loved the way that instead of just having like Evan and Zoe have this scene at the end, like Evan does the work to figure out who Connor was, and I know at this point I can understand that he knows that he can never make up for what he did. But at the end of the day, the fact that he's doing something and he's telling Connor's story means that, I don't know, that all of this wasn't for nothing. Like the fact that he was able to find Connor singing and send it to the parents, like the genuine joy on their faces, like that was one of the best acted scenes in the movie. Like Amy Adams was just like I love Amy Adams. She's like, come here, and like you could just feel so much joy coming out of their faces as they watch like this never before seen video of their son, and it was just. I don't know if it was the circumstances or the performances, but I thought it ended so much more so much more clarity and so much more, I don't even know what the word is, but it was just like closure. There was so much more closure with this ending. And if the musical takes anything from this movie, I would say, please God, take that, because I like the way that at that point, like Evan takes accountability of his actions. The entire movie, we understand that he's not like in the right state of mind, but he understands what he did was wrong.
Yeah, and I like how he doesn't apologize for it too, because at this point he's like past the point of apologizing. Like he just has to.
How would you even apologize?
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, I think that was the best part.
Especially in an age like I feel like the show came out probably right at the time that we were in the Me Too movement, and there was a lot of really fake apologies coming out, and I feel like this movie like adapted well to effectively handle the apology. I mean. Him saying like, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. Like that really just worked for me, and I think not worked for me. That's not the right word. I just think it worked better. You know?
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. Yeah. Anyway, we have talked about the good things in this movie. Yeah. What are our final thoughts of Dear Evan Hansen? Just like our overall, like what did we come out of this movie thinking? And how has it affected our lives and changed us forever? That was really deep. Sorry.
I was about to say.
I don't know if it changed my life forever.
So the one thing that I'm going to say about the movie is that it's just meh. Like, I think it's all right. I think it also helps, once again, reinforce getting musical theater out to everyday people. Mm-hmm. And you know, at least starting a conversation about mental health, but not, it's like this movie just does so many wrong things regarding mental health. But I will say, I loved Ben Platt's performance because it reminded me so much of the musical, but I also don't like how old he is, and you can really see it in his face, especially in like movie acting. I do agree with you guys. He's way too old to play the part, but I really like the way that he plays character because it stays really true to the musical, whether or not it's like supposed to be meant for film. But there's a reason why I'm in musical theater and not film. I know more about musical theater, and like for me, Ben Platt's performance stayed really true to the musical. So I don't know. I really like that, and overall, I think this movie has a lot of problems and issues that it needs to work out. But yeah, I think it could be a lot better under different circumstances, for sure.
Yeah, I would agree. I think just leaving this movie, I was just overall like kind of disappointed. I kind of had the reaction of like, this is why people hate musical theater. Like that was my. I was upset. I actually watched my head of my theater department. He actually went with his husband the same day as I did in the theater, and I watched him walk out, and he was just like had like an angry face on it, like angry face, and I could tell that he had kind of the same reaction that I did. But also, besides my reaction, there was a row of people in the theater that stood up and they clapped after this movie was done.
Well, it's just like people who don't know musical theater. Like,
Yeah.
I asked my mom about it when she went and saw it, and she was like, "Oh, I loved it. Like, it was awesome." And she's not like a big musical theater person.
I
So,
think-
yeah.
But also, it was just a really. It felt like had a lot of problems, but I feel like it's going to reach a lot of people, and that's one thing. Even though it's not the best representation, and it's not the greatest thing in the world, and I think we should do better in our musical theater films. They should have just released the pro shot. I agree with you, Ryan, that it did affect some people, and I'm not gonna try to hurt those people's feelings by telling them their feelings about this movie are invalid, and that when they were affected by this film, that it doesn't matter. I'm just gonna say, like, I think this, in my opinion, is a bad movie, and it is a bad representation of mental health, and is a bad representation of high schoolers. He's 30 years old.
I think very much along the lines of what you both said, but I think that there was a really good movie encased in here. Like, I think there were so many good elements of this. Like, I think that Ben Platt, like, he is too old, but I think he gave a really good performance. I think if he had more time to refine it to film, it would be better. I think that Amy Adams, I love her. I love her in everything, and I'm very biased in saying that. I thought that Julianne Moore gave an amazing performance with So Big, So Small. Like, there were so many different pieces at play here that I feel like could have made a great movie. And what I am thankful about this is it makes me more grateful for the stage adaptation of Dear Evan Hansen. I think it made it better for me because I was like, oh God, at least it's not this. I agree with Kyle. I think it's an awful representation of mental health. I was very emotionally moved by it. I cried 6 times. I think it's an important. I think the conversations that it could start are important, and I'm a little upset and disappointed because I don't even think the movie was bad. I just think it was not good. It was mediocre. It was average. When I think that they could have had a great movie here, because I feel like if any movie was to get adapted to movie, I thought that Dear Evan Hansen would be would end up being a great movie musical. And I'm very upset with the ending product just because I don't know, I feel like Dear Evan Hansen is a very important story about mental illness, and agreeing with Ryan, because I fight with him about this all the time. I think that the conversations about mental illness and between parents and children that could be started from Dear Evan Hansen are amazing. And if any start from this, I think that that's amazing, but I don't see that happening just because the ending product was just so sloppy and all over the place and just poorly edited and poorly told and poorly acted. I just feel like you almost need to have watched the musical adaptation to get anything out of it, to even appreciate that ending song, to appreciate any of the good parts in this movie. And that's what's frustrating, because in it becoming a movie and making it more accessible for people, I feel like it was also made inaccessible because this movie adaptation is probably going to turn a lot of people off to ever listening or watching Dear Evan Hansen on Broadway, and that I think is a true shame.
Or musical theater in general. I feel like it's a lot for musical theater in general, and I think there's a lot of. This was a bad representation of mental health and bad representation of students in high school because they were played by adults, and it's a bad representation of musical theater in a lot of ways. I think it just didn't do its research. That
makes me more and more nervous for the Wicked movie that's going to happen.
Yeah, same producer. Same producer.
Dancing through life.
Anyway, now it's time for our wonderful next segment. What is caffeinating us? Ryan, what is caffeinating you?
Yes, I'm so glad that you asked me. So, having Colton Ryan in this movie, actually, and I love Colton Ryan.
He's wonderful.
He's wonderful. I love his voice because it's very unique. But the one thing that is caffeinating me, it has been out for a year now, and I've been listening to it. I've listened all the way through, like, multiple times. It's called We Aren't Kids Anymore. It's by Drew Gasparini. It is a song cycle that he made, and it's basically like Drew Gasparini and all of the songs of like him growing up and things like that. So this also has Colton Ryan in it, if you guys are Colton Ryan fans now, because of the movie, which I agree with the Colton Ryan fans, but because of the movie, Okay. But I definitely think everyone should go check it out. It's an album. You can find it on everywhere. Another album you still can find, though, is Levi Our Stars. So please go check that out, too.
It's,
Levi!
Levi, we have talked about this many times on the show. Levi is a wonderful human being. He has released this album that we talked about many times. You're probably really annoyed with us for talking about it again. It is Jeff the Delivery Guy. You can find it on all the music streaming platforms. Please listen to it. Put it on repeat a whole bunch of times. Just get it in your brain. Memorize the songs for us and come back to us. And if you memorize the songs, we'll
give you a high five.
Yeah, and we'll clap for you. So you should do that because that's cool. Anyway, Mikla, what is caffeinating you?
Besides this, barely any caffeine vanilla chai. This is one of the many times that I'm going to say this on the show. I adore Taylor Swift in her entirety. I have been listening through a lot of her old music recently to prepare for Red, which is coming out November 16th. I'm so excited. I love Taylor Swift, and it kind of sounds like I didn't know what I was going to say, but trust me, I did. I love Taylor Swift, and I think she's a wonderful woman, and I love listening to 1989 over and over and over again because that's my comfort album, and I'm just very excited, and I'm very proud of her for all of the work that she's been doing. Like on her new album, she wrote a song for this little boy who died to an ailment that I do not remember right now, but it's called Ronan, and I'm just very excited.
Sad.
No, it is, but she's wonderful, she's beautiful, and I'm very excited to see what she does next. I love Taylor Swift. And listen to Fearless Taylor's version if you haven't already. Do not listen to any of her old albums because those are not owned by her. But yeah, we love T-Swizzle.
Kyle, what is caffeinating you?
I am so glad you asked, Ryan. You know what is caffeinating me? I am a very, very large fan of the Muppets. They are my favorite. I just love the Muppets. What?
I love the Muppets too.
Muppets Haunted Mansion just came out on Disney Plus, and
I forgot about that.
It is so much fun. It reminds me of the old Muppets movies. I wouldn't put it up to par with like the original Muppet movie or Muppets Christmas Carol, but I think it is just a really fun. It just kind of brings you back to like the old Muppet Show that was on TV, and it's not anything super amazing or anything. It's not a groundbreaking movie, but it's a lot of fun, and it's a movie I think they filmed during quarantine. You can tell because everyone's a ghost, and they like layered them over, but it's just a lot of fun. It's a good time. Will Arnett is like one of the main characters in it. It's a really who else is in it? There's some really I can't think of who else is in it. I don't know. There's a lot. There's a
whole bunch of like. There's Yvette Nicole Brown, which
Yes.
she's been in a lot of stuff like Community,
Yeah.
Drake and Josh, which is like her like star show. But yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of people.
It's a
Big
really,
question, Kyle.
What?
What do you think about Muppets 2014?
You mean the Most Wanted?
No, the one with Amy Adams.
I love it. That's my favorite one. It made me cry.
That's my favorite one too. I just needed to make sure that's my favorite Muppet movie of all time.
I think it's a really it's not like a normal Muppets movie. I think it's so different and it feels kind of refreshing in a lot of ways. But that's not what I'm talking about. Muppets Haunted Man. Go check it out. It's on Disney Plus. Anyway, thank you for watching or listening or doing whatever you do with our show. As always, you can find us on YouTube at Coffee Boys Official. You can find I think it's Coffee Boys Productions. You can find us on Instagram at Coffee Boys Productions, Facebook at Coffee Boys Productions, and we have a TikTok. It's Coffee Boys Official. You can visit our website coffeeboys.wixsite.com/home, and there you can find all our new stuff. We have albums on there. We have trailers that we've made. We've had Herlock Sholmes. We have some information about the show. We did Crazy But True. We have Wailing Wells Lake. We have past seasons of the podcast. It's just some good stuff, you know.
Oh, Crazy But True is fun. I like that. That was a good one.
Just a lot of fun stuff, and we're gonna be coming up with some more fun stuff soon. So thanks for joining us again, as always, and keep supporting us and follow us on all our platforms and check us out everywhere you can. Thank you, as always, for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye. I gotta turn it off. Where's the button? I lost the button.